blessings of peace and love and more love. Wanted to jump on here and have a little chat with you before I jump into that pool. I have this tank top over my bathing suit that has palm trees. I love palm trees. I can't imagine living anywhere without them. And I was just reading this report on the reforesting of El Yunque and other areas of the island of Puerto Rico. Back in 2017, when Hurricane Maria went through Puerto Rico, there was an estimated loss of 30 million trees. 30 million trees. The minority of losses was of palm trees. Why is that? Because the palm tree has a fibrous, porous, yet anchored root system. And that root system allows for the trees to withstand hurricane force winds and tornadoes. They're bendy. The wood of the tree is flexible. It bends in the wind. It rarely snaps. In fact, the surviving trees in Puerto Rico were mostly stripped. Not many were broken. Not many were torn out of the ground. And after I read that article, I was like, that's how we need to be. That's the level of resilience that we need to have in our lives. To be anchored in our faith, anchored in trust, anchored in some deeper inner knowing of what it is that we are made of and how we can survive the storms of life, the ups and downs, the chaos at times, the chaotic relationships also. And we do that through consistency of our spiritual practices. And even some of the greatest, most evolved spiritual minds of our time have admitted and spoken about the difficulties that they have. One of whom I've always loved very much and followed was Ram Dass. And I just went back a few days ago listening to some of his talks, and there's one called Cultivating the Heart of Compassion. And he tells this great story about how he was going through this time. This is like back in the 70s. He was going through this period of time where he was having a really hard time with a particular politician, Caspar Weinberger. And Caspar Weinberger was a controversial figure back in the day. And so Ram Dass was talking about how, when he would see him on the news or he would hear about him, he would just get like all upset, and he would like, get all into his judgment and to his condemnation. And the way he handled his ego's need to judge and condemn Caspar Weinberger was to put him on his altar. So he said he had all these deities and his guru on the altar, and in the morning he would light candles, he would light incense, and he would say, "Good morning, Buddha. Good morning, my guru. Good morning, Jesus. Good morning, Mother Mary. Hello, Caspar." And he would just, every morning, he would just watch himself, watch his ego, listen to the voice inside that would continue to condemn Caspar Weinberger. And he continued practicing with greeting him on his altar until he started noticing his heart soften, until he started hearing his tone change. And he started noticing that he could look at that picture and see innocence, see the child, see what God saw when he looked at Caspar Weinberger. And that's our task too. Our task is to continuously practice so that we can rise above the ego's insistence that we see something that is ours to condemn, because it's really not ours to condemn. What are we doing when we're condemning is we're hurting a reflection of ourselves, which means we're hurting ourselves. I heard this story years ago on NPR. It was an interview with a boxer, and I don't remember who the boxer was. don't know much about boxing, but I do know that this guy, he told the story that he was thinking that he was gonna win the fight, but the opponent came at him and grabbed him. And so when he went to punch him, he swung around so hard that he ended up punching himself. And I thought that's what we do. When we condemn, when we judge, when we lash out at someone else, we're hurting ourselves because we are hurting a brother or sister. We are hurting an opportunity to look within to find out, well, why am I being triggered? Why am I upset? Why am I judging? Why am I hurt? And that's what we need to heal, is that within us that stays in a place of judgment and condemnation. And so when we are looking outward, not inward, that punch is going to come right back at us, just like that contender. It could have been a contender. So the Course in Miracles tells us right in the beginning, right in chapter 1, it tells us, I mean, I'm telling you, the whole course could probably be summed up in the first chapter, but since we are difficult students in this life, we want things to be different than they are when it comes to not meeting our ego's expectations. And so some things may be true. There are some universal truths, and we are resistant to them because sometimes they don't feel like they are the most pleasurable or the easiest to attain. So right here in chapter 1, it says, miracles arise from a mind that is ready for them. By being united, our mind goes out to everyone. It doesn't say the ones you like, the ones that are meeting your expectations, the ones that are easy to love. It says everyone. Why? Because it's not by no coincidence, by no accident that we're meeting who we meet, that we're interacting the way we interact, and that we're having the lessons that are brought to us. It's an individualized curriculum. In case you haven't heard, it's an individualized curriculum. It says that it's an impersonal nature, an expression of what you truly are. The miracle places the mind in a state of grace. The mind then naturally welcomes the host within and the stranger without. The host within, the higher holy self, and the stranger without. When you bring in the stranger, he becomes your brother. When you bring in the stranger, he becomes your brother. And who is the stranger? The stranger is anyone, not just someone you don't know, the way we define stranger, but someone that we've determined is a stranger to us, to our sensibilities, and to our expectations. You know, as I was saying in a podcast earlier this week, we were talking about how sometimes it's difficult to show up for those who are closest to us. So you might be at the grocery store being really nice to the people in the store, and yet angry and holding a grudge to the person you left in the car. So that is creating distance between you, it's turning your heart away, and it's creating a stranger of that person. So bringing the understanding that it is the host within, your higher holy self, that is welcoming the stranger. And that stranger then becomes your brother. When you bring in the stranger, he becomes your brother. The miracle has effects on your brothers and your sisters that you may not recognize, but it is always a blessing to you and to whomever you interact with. The miracle is a change in consciousness, and then the second step is the change in behavior. So it's not just how we're thinking, but how we're interacting, how we're literally showing up as love, how we're putting the stranger on the altar, those whom we've condemned, those whom we've judged. We put them on the altar. And in the morning, as we're lovingly greeting all our deities and our gods and all that is holy and sacred, and then our eyes fall upon that one that we've been in judgment of, and we could say, I see you now. I see you as a beloved, and I welcome you into my heart. So let's take a look at something that I found in the bumpy road to enlightenment that is along this line of thinking. I quote a book called Awakening in Time by Jacqueline Small. And you know, the funny thing is this is one of those books that I had for years and years and years and years, and I would always go back to it. And whenever I would go back to it, I'd find something else that helped me awaken even further, help me understand. And it's just like A Course in Miracles or any other spiritual path. We keep taking that same road until we start noticing the beauty, the growth, the splendor that we may have overlooked before. And that is true of the beauty and the growth and the splendor of our brothers and sisters. In her book, Awakening in Time, Jacqueline Small tells us that for transformation to take place, for a person to become enlightened, her mind must die to its old and outworn ways. In Buddhism, there is the idea that we have been hypnotized to believe in a certain way, and that at some point we must be de-hypnotized in order for the mind to abandon its negative defensive assumptions. And in the Christian scripture, Romans 12:2, we are told that we can be transformed by the renewal of our mind. So consistent message here from all the faith paths, and certainly from A Course in Miracles, that we are in charge of what's going on in our mind, and then noticing how it's affecting how we feel in our heart, how we interact with others, whether or not we can truly love the stranger. Can we bring the stranger in and make him a brother or a sister? And sometimes we have to recognize that the person we're calling a stranger is a person we also claim to love. So we are consistently in a state of reevaluation and the opportunity to rise higher. Let's rise higher, pray harder, forgive steadily, and love readily. There's an italicized section that I saw in the same section that I read to you earlier from the first chapter that I wanted to share with you. I thought it was something that also is important to remember. It says, spirit is in a state of grace forever. Your reality is only spirit. Therefore, you are in a state of grace forever. It's just remembering, reawakening, remembering, refreshing our minds to that truth, to that reality, so that instead of punching ourselves in the face because we're trying to hurt someone else, we put them on the altar. We put them on the altar and we greet them. We greet them with the acknowledgement, the remembering, and the knowing that they are there to help us rise higher, to look within, to see where it is that we can do better and be better, the healing that needs to happen, the growth that needs to occur within ourselves. So let's take that to prayer. Let's just have a moment. Take a nice deep breath in. We give thanks for these teachings that come from so many different paths and so many different walks of life and religion and generations and mysticism, taking us through different roads to the same destination, the destination to our higher holy self. Sometimes the greatest, longest walk is from our head to our heart. That short distance sometimes seems so long, and today we ask to have the willingness to feel and see and know more deeply that we can be rooted and anchored like the palm trees. We can sway with the ways of life and stand strong in our commitment to continue loving, to looking at each other with eyes of compassion and understanding, and knowing that everyone who crosses our path may seem to be a stranger, but as we open our hearts, they become a brother or a sister. And for the opportunity to engage in this blessing, we give thanks. So thanks for that. Thank you, Ram Dass. Resting in peace. Thank you. God bless you. See you soon.